Hey there, I'm Scott, and this is Tangents. Well, again, I'm recording one of these at about 10:15 at night. Gonna go to bed pretty soon, but it's already Thursday, and there's no way I'm gonna have time to make one of these tomorrow. I keep thinking I'm gonna be able to squeeze it in every day, and just have not had an opportunity. So, I have a bunch of stuff I want to talk about though. And today, my theme is stupidity. And I talk a lot about stupidity, just generally, but there are some things that have just been really irking me. Really fucking I almost want to scream. I'm not I don't know if you can gather this. I guess the people that know me probably already know this. I'm pretty even keeled. You can probably gather that from listening or watching as well. Generally speaking, I have a pretty good set point. I get a little elevated, a little, down, but I'm pretty much steady. There have been exceptions to that in my life, but they're extremely rare. And now is actually kind of one of them, and not in a super positive way. There was in graduate school someone who I was completely enamored with and felt like hyper strongly about, and really just spending time with her was like amazing. And like my normal range is kind of like this, and then just get a message from her or go over and hang out at her office, and it was like, Also, though, that didn't go well. So the downs from that were quite extreme as well. For someone who's pretty even most of the time, I don't know, it was kind of, in a weird way, I guess, intoxicating. In addition to just enjoying spending time with her, having those kinds of extremes, I can see some appeal to it. But also it's nice, generally speaking, especially knowing people who have a lot of wild, kind of uncontrollable extremes. Not having that is not a bad thing. I don't feel at all bad about that. I feel pretty good. I feel extremely fortunate, honestly, to have the temperament I do. And I think, and generally my outlook, actually, I feel very thankful for a lot of things like that. Very thankful also, I talked last time about not being raised with religion, and I very much appreciate that. My mom listens and watches some of these, or listens to or watches some of them. And if you're watching, thank you so much for that again. I mean, I don't know if I've ever come out and said it explicitly, but I appreciate it so much. It's like it is a gift every day. I find so much comfort in that, and it's hard to explain actually how much so. And similarly, I mean, genetically, the temperament, I'm sure, is mostly that. Probably also is as well how I was raised, which I'm not complaining about. But one thing that I really appreciate as well is sort of the epistemology and the way of looking at life that I was raised with. And this, I don't mean in terms of religion here, or unreligion rather, but in terms of just looking at reality, looking at evidence, weighing it, making decisions based on that kind of stuff. Everybody has some things that they're not perfect at with regard to that. We all have probably some ridiculous beliefs that are either not tested, or if they have been tested and invalidated, we still hang on to them. I'm sure that's true of me as well as anyone else. But I do like to think, and I don't think I'm wrong here, that I'm a few sigma in the good direction here of, I really go out of my way, if I find out that I'm wrong, to change my mind. Which to me seems like it should just be a fucking given. I mean, it should be just ingrained into us at an early age. And instead of that, people seem to very, by and large, be trained that it's better to stick to being wrong than to admit it. And that admission of being wrong is embarrassing, but not the act of being wrong. Like, to me, I am embarrassed if I'm wrong or I misunderstood something, but I learn and correct that to ease that embarrassment. I see lots of people who they find out they're wrong about something and then they just double down. They won't accept that they were wrong about it. And it's such a counterproductive way of going through life. It's such a horrible, like it's got to be a horrible existence as well to some extent, although living in denial, so you probably don't recognize it as much. But what I want to talk about specifically here, and the stupidity here is not the person I'm going to talk about cultural stuff. I'm going to pull out a specific person. And he is not stupid. He's quite intelligent. He has a decent understanding of the way things work in a lot of ways. And he's a friend. He's somebody I work with. And overall, yeah, generally good feelings about him. He was raised a little bit differently, and most of his friends and family are Republicans and kind of religious and, very different from how I was raised. There's nothing wrong inherently with that, or 20, 30 years ago, there probably wouldn't have been. But today, we live in a world where basic, just simple public health things are held up as though they're, A, a matter of choice, and B, completely unknowable. It's really frustrating, honestly, for me, because I do bring up my background sometimes, but I was going to get a PhD in microbiology, focusing on virology. I went through all the coursework for that, virology, immunology, molecular biology, all this kind of stuff. Those kind of emphasized on those. I taught infectious disease microbiology. I have some knowledge on this stuff. I did not do the research for the PhD, but the background, So I've got some clue of what I'm talking about. I run into people on Twitter regularly. And when I'm using this as a proxy for real life, because they are out there. This is not like Twitter does not reflect reality. Twitter is a sampling of reality. There may be some selection bias in it, but by and large, it is like taking a drop of water out of your pool. Probably not going to get a radically different pH in that drop than the rest of the pool. Could happen, but probably not. Statistically, I think Twitter is pretty representative. So I talked to people, and I spent a lot of time going back and forth with one there who is not, this is a thing that I'm hearing now a lot. They're not an anti-vaxxer, but they have questions. They're just asking questions. They're just concerned. And it's annoying to me, because at least if you called yourself an anti-vaxxer or admitted to that, it would be, it wouldn't be good. It wouldn't excuse it, but at least you'd admit to what you are. Instead, they're like, oh no, I'm not anti-vax. I just worry about these things. And then they get information from terrible sources that have no idea what they're talking about. The one that I'm talking about in particular on Twitter, although there are many, but one in particular is coming to mind. And she keeps linking to references from a couple of people who actually are somewhat experts. But what she's doing is kind of twisting what they said into something which it absolutely is not. And I think this is a fundamental problem of just people who, A, are not experts, and B, don't understand why experts say certain things the way they do. If I ever express absolute certainty in something, even when I do it, you should assume there's an error bar there. There's an uncertainty to everything. The sun, probably going to come up tomorrow, like it has every other day for the rest of my life, but there's some tiny, tiny uncertainty to it. So I might speak in absolute terms, but even when I do, that uncertainty is there. Experts generally will say things like, kind of hedging their bets, essentially, because they know part of the process of becoming an expert in something is humbling, and it trains you, hopefully, that you don't know everything, It trains you that, you go through that little Dunning-Kruger thing, you get past it and you're like, oh shit, I know less. Not only do I know less than I knew, or less than I thought I did when I was at the height of that Dunning-Kruger, although I would like to say that my Dunning-Kruger peak is a little lower than a lot of people's. But not only do you realize you know less than you knew then, or you thought you did, you know less than you thought you did before you started, because you realize all of the depth of the subject. You realize how much there is to know and how many things are not known. And so you add that in. So people who are experts will say things like, well, we don't really know, we're pretty sure. And when they say that, they're saying like, we're really fucking certain. Not always, but in the cases like here, we're pretty, like 99.9% sure, but you kind of, you never know everything. So there's that little uncertainty. And people attach to that uncertainty and they turn it into, the experts don't even fucking know. It's like, if I say, I'm pretty sure, but I don't really know that the sun's gonna come up tomorrow, that doesn't mean that I don't know if the sun's gonna come up tomorrow. It means that I'm expressing the understanding that I am not infallible and there are certain things that I don't know with absolute certainty. And, maybe it turns out the whole universe is an illusion and I find out, there is no sun. It's possible. It's extremely unlikely, but it's possible. So that's what people are saying when they say this kind of shit. And you get these, not an anti-vaxxer, but an anti-vaxxer people latching onto that kind of stuff. And then you can't even explain it to them because they're so far gone. And this is the thing that really gets to me. People it's not just that they don't know. It's not just that they think they know and they have this unreasonable certainty about subjects they clearly know nothing about. This is another thing. When you're an expert, I've talked about this before, but when you become an expert on things, there are lots of, like knowledge shibboleths, for want of a better term. They're things where they don't necessarily mean anything when you say it or when you express it or if you say this or that. But when you do it or do it wrong, it is a proxy for how much or how little you know about a subject. And there's an annoying thing now where, like, there used to be a lot more of these things where you could just kind of see how little somebody actually knows about something. Google has fucked that up a little bit, but not completely. And so you get people talking about stuff and they claim to be an expert on something, or they don't claim to be an expert, but they claim to be referencing an expert. And then they say things like, and I do not in any way want this chopped up so that it sounds like I'm saying this. They will say something like making the claim that an mRNA vaccine, and it absolutely is not this, they'll claim it's a gene therapy. That's not how it fucking works. Gene therapy is modifying your genome. Like, like the basic biology 101 kind of shit is learning that genes are coded for in DNA. They're transcribed into RNA. I actually know the stuff. I'm just like irritated about this. They're transcribed into RNA. That RNA is translated into proteins. The proteins fold and do their stuff in the cell. mRNA vaccines are just taking that RNA, they're bypassing the genome altogether. They're getting translated into protein, making those proteins. If you get infected by a virus, that virus, especially if it's an RNA virus and it's a positive sense RNA virus, it's literally just mRNA basically. Not exactly, but basically. And that's translated directly from the virus. If it's negative sense RNA virus genome, first it's copied into the positive sense, which is also a template to make more negative sense, but it also becomes mRNA. And if you get infected by a virus that is an RNA virus, it's basically fucking functionally the same thing. Now, if you get infected by a virus that has reverse transcriptase, turns RNA into DNA and then puts that DNA in your genome, that's a different fucking situation. There you can start talking about gene therapy. Like a retrovirus puts its genome into your fucking genome. That's, you get infected with HIV, that's kind of a natural form of gene therapy. There is no fucking way in hell to call, if you know what gene therapy is, and you know what genes are, you know anything about expression of genes or transcription and translation, any of this stuff, calling mRNA, I'm apoplectic at this, honestly. Calling it gene therapy is fucking insane. And I'm sorry for the ableist language, but it is fucking insane. It is just detached from reality. And doing that tells me, someone who actually knows a little bit about this stuff, that you don't know the fucking first thing about what you're talking about. You may have used some of the words that make you sound like you know what you're talking about, but you throw that out and it's like, oh shit, this was all a show and all pretend, and then you get that little peek into what's really there. And you hear shit like this, and it's just like, it's maddening because it's so obvious. And it's not something like, you don't have to be a fucking PhD on a subject like this. You don't have to have a master's in the domain. You don't have to be an expert in it. Just to have taken like a fucking introductory biology course and learned about this stuff. And that tells you that the people who are making claims like this, making just Looney Tunes statements, they don't know even the basic level. They don't have like kindergarten, and they're making claims that are like at the college level. My fucking ass. So you get these people, and the thing about these mRNA vaccines is that they're basically like taking a live attenuated virus. So like one way to make a vaccine is to sort of weaken the pathogen, attenuate it, and then infect people with that. And if you do that, it expresses, it produces mRNA, expresses the proteins, your immune system responds to them, and now you have a protective immunity. You're bypassing the infection by putting an mRNA vaccine in. You're giving yourself just the protein expression, and specifically just the protein expression that will elicit a protective immunity. And you can even take like a part, you don't even have to take the whole fucking protein, you can just take the part in particular that you want to raise protective immunity against. And if you do that, and you add some adjuvants, some things to make your immune system angry basically, and you get these proteins expressed, you get protective immunity in a much safer, much more effective way, much more targeted way than if you got a natural infection or if you got a live attenuated vaccine. Another form of vaccination, which this is much better than, is to get a dead virus. If you get dead virus, so you take something like polio, and you take that, grow it in like monkey kidneys or something, kidney cells, and then purify it out, and then kill it with formaldehyde or whatever. Now you take that, and you need a lot of it because it's not going to replicate in you. You need a lot of it. You put it in, add an adjuvant, and now you've put in all of this stuff. Some of it's cross-linked and denatured, so it's not going to have the native form, and if you raise immunity to that, it might not actually work for the real thing. And also you have a bunch of other crap in there that, is not useful. That is a much worse way to do it. These mRNA vaccines are, like a fucking technological miracle. And there's something that when I was in undergrad, the first virology course that I took in the 90s, to date myself, they were talking about doing this stuff. And, like theoretically, as soon as we knew about gene expression and all of this kind of stuff, it was something you would think about doing, but it wasn't something that the technology was there for. Now it's there, and it's just fucking amazing. And people have all of these crazy ideas about it, though, that are just, on one hand, you want to try to debunk some of this stuff, but on the other hand, it's just so out there that it's like, I can't even begin. Like, what the fuck am I going to do? So I want to get to my friend. My friend is married. His wife is pregnant. And a few months ago, he tells me that his wife's OB-GYN told her not to get vaccinated because of some kind of risk that does not exist. And when I say it does not exist, I mean, I've looked at the fucking studies of this stuff. There's no risk, like no measurable risk to a pregnant woman from these vaccines. I don't know where this just quackery comes from that claims otherwise, but it's not there. It's not like, oh, there's some, it's just essentially no risk. You know what there is a big risk for though? Getting infected with fucking COVID. If you're a pregnant woman and you get sick, just being pregnant is a massive pre-existing condition. Getting sick and being pregnant, it's really bad. It's really fucking dangerous. Getting hypoxic when you have a baby on board, not a good thing. I don't know if you know this. Not a good thing for brain development and things. So I'm trying not to like flip out when I hear this from him, but I did sort of say, like, that is not based on reality. That's not based on evidence. In reality, and I showed him like a CDC or WHO paper or something. In reality, it's a good idea to get vaccinated. In fact, it's a good idea for everybody to get vaccinated if they're immune competent. And it's especially a good idea for a pregnant woman to get vaccinated because no risk essentially from the vaccine and significant fucking risk from getting infected. This is months ago. And also, like, I've been talking to people on our team and, I'm not telling people like, you got to get vaccinated to work for us, but I am saying like, encouraging people like, it would be really good. You care about people, you don't want them to get sick. We're all remote, so it's not like they're going to bring something to me. So out of self-interest in that regard, it doesn't matter that much, but I don't want you to get fucking sick. Get vaccinated. This magical technology exists. You can get a shot, which honestly is one of the least painful shots I've ever had in my life. I've had a bunch of shots in my life. The needle is such high gauge, so small, that the first one I got, I was looking away when they did it. I don't know why. I didn't want to watch. And I wasn't even aware that I got a shot. Now, the next day I felt like I got punched in the arm for a day or so. I felt it afterwards, but the first one didn't feel at all. The second one I watched, and I relaxed my arm this time, got shot, and I watched it happen, and I felt like the barest of pinpricks. Like, not even, a pinprick doesn't even describe it. It was like, I'm aware that something just happened in my arm. I can feel it was, focused in a point, or close to a point. But it wasn't painful. It was like, nothing. And that one, for me, I know people sometimes have side effects from the vaccines. It happens. It's much better than getting COVID still. Get a little sick for like a day or two, like, okay, big fucking deal. I didn't get sick at all. My co-founder also got vaccinated. He didn't get sick. Now, it's anecdotal. Maybe we're lucky. We have other people that worked for us who got vaccinated and got sick. Not sick, but didn't feel well for a day and recovered and then have protective immunity, at least until or unless, something can evolve to bypass that, which I fucking hope doesn't happen. And hopefully, hopefully it won't happen. Hopefully it can't happen. If it does happen, it is entirely due to the stupidity of people just not wearing goddamn masks while this stuff is still going on and not getting vaccinated. Because you get everybody vaccinated or enough people vaccinated, you get the masks going. The virus can't propagate. It's not getting exposed to competent hosts. And if it's not replicating, it's not mutating. If it's not mutating and replicating and getting exposed to people who have been vaccinated, it's not challenging them. There's no selective pressure for immune evasion. But we're not there. We don't have that. It should be like the most fucking obvious, simple public health thing. Wear a goddamn mask, get vaccinated, and if we did this and we just kind of like, the most frustrating thing to me too, we've been over a year in some kind of like half-assed, not really lockdown, but just kind of like, things are not right. We could have taken like 6 to 8 weeks and really gone hard and nipped this shit in the bud. If literally, if globally we could have just frozen everything for a month and a half, which we could, it's hard, but it's totally doable. If we could have done that without a vaccine, done, fucking gone. The virus would be just extinct, eradicated. But we didn't do that. We didn't come close to doing that. There are, and you see existence proofs of places where they did do that. And, they're not perfect. Taiwan had a big surge in cases. Somebody brought it in, somehow like snuck past their defenses. One asshole, probably, brought it into the country, and thousands of people were, it's just like, it's maddening because this is a place where it basically did not exist for a long time. Australia comes and goes. They have problems because they're still letting people come in. The quarantine is not perfect. But, they did do, lockdowns, a few. And they also basically knocked the shit down. New Zealand, you look at these places, they exist. And then you look at us and we're fucking dumb. I'm in Gilbert, Arizona, the home of Andy Biggs, if you know who he is. Man, and I go out, and in this area, people are acting as though there's no pandemic, and just like going about their business, no mask, not vaccinated, just fuck it. So getting back to my friend, his brother, his dad, a lot of his relatives, a lot of his friends, they're all in this right-wing media mindstorm kind of bullshit, where they have, first off, they think, and I'm picking on them, but this is a general problem. And the real problem here, I'm not trying to absolve them or people like them of responsibility, but the real problem is that there are a lot of people who actually know better, who spread fear, uncertainty, and doubt, FUD. They do this for whatever personal reasons they may have. It's like helps them somehow. Probably just pure cynicism. They spread lies and things like this. And now they've sown so much doubt that my friend, and again, not a stupid person, we talk all the time, and he says things constantly like, there's just no way to know what's true because you have, you're saying that global warming is this massive problem that is already here and is going to get much, much worse. And then these other people are saying, oh no, it's not a big deal at all. And who can I'm not trying to be fucking mean here, but there's a lot of science and evidence here talking about this, and this is just fucking nothing. It's just dumb. There's no fucking thing here. Like, really. Now, again, I don't know that the sun is going to rise tomorrow with absolute certainty. I don't know that this is absolutely certain. But as fucking close as knowing that the sun is going to rise, that is the fucking case. We're like 1 degree Celsius above pre-industrial levels, which is a really bad way to report this stuff, because a degree Celsius of increase in global average temperatures doesn't sound like that much, but what you realize is it's not just that, it's gone up a degree every day. It's that, the variation is actually going up, but the mean has gone up. And also, near the equator, places like Phoenix even, some places even, it's gone down slightly. But near the poles, it's gone up significantly. Like 1 degree Celsius here is a few degrees, maybe even 10 degrees in the Arctic, the Antarctic. And you look at that, And it's like, okay, this is really fucking bad, you know? You look at Portland, getting Phoenix kind of temperatures. Seattle. These are places that never see these kinds of temperatures. It's like 48, approaching 50 degrees. And you look at that, and yeah, it's an anomaly. It's like, oh, you know, every year is the hottest year on record. Every year we have the the largest number of days over 100 on, you know, of any previous year. I mean, and again, okay, it's not completely monotonic. There is occasionally a year where it goes, you know, a little bit better, but it's a trend that is not hard to see. If you look at the fucking data, you know, and just watch Al Gore's fucking movie. I mean, that movie, An Inconvenient Truth. It's painful to me to look at everything in there, see that it's actually, not only was it right then, it's actually conservative in terms of how bad things are going to get. And he laid it out, and he also laid out the evidence very clearly, very dispassionately. And we're still fucking here. And you have like these fucking Democrats in Congress. Not even like Republicans, at least I don't have high expectations of. I don't expect them to say, okay, we need to do something about global warming because we're in deep fucking shit. But the fucking Democrats are not doing anything. Or they're taking these minor little, you know, we're just gonna, you know, just cut down a little, just, you know, we're gonna take the parsley. I need to go on a diet. I'm not gonna eat the parsley on my plate. Still gonna eat the fucking 3-4 course meal, but I'm gonna take the parsley off, you know? It's like, it's maddening. It's really maddening because you see so clearly where we are. You see so clearly where we're going. And the fact that people won't fucking do the shit that needs to be done, and you know, for what? For what? You're gonna get a little bit richer for a little bit of time, and then everybody's gonna be kind of fucked, you know? And you know, I'm a relatively optimistic person. I don't think humanity will probably go extinct, but I don't think it's gonna be good. I think, you know, like low-lying coastal areas are going to get completely displaced. They're gonna get pushed in, like countries like Bangladesh are going to get pushed out of where they are, and you have a bunch of poor people that are losing their homes in a densely packed area, getting pushed into another country. That's how wars start. So you get a bunch of that. A lot of places where we farm are going to stop working for farming. So, and granted, okay, there's a lot of Canada that is not arable now that will be. You know, Siberia, the tundra might actually be okay. Although the tundra melting, permafrost melting is not great because there's fucking methane under there that's getting in the air. Methane is like 40 times better of a greenhouse gas, or stronger of a, maybe I shouldn't say better, but it's 40 times more effective than carbon dioxide. So, you know, letting a lot of that out is not really doing anyone any favors. And you look at this shit and it's just like, fucking do something. You know, I mean, Kyrsten Sinema and Manchin will go down in history as people who were basically presiding over, I don't want to say like the fall of our civilization, but I mean, I don't think that that's all that insane to say. I mean, certainly a massive step backwards. They're doing this bullshit just to, you know, enrich themselves or become the center of attention or whatever the fuck the reasons they have, whatever excuses they make. And in doing so, they're going to allow our democracy to get fucked up. They're not gonna do the things that it takes to get the voting rights, to get actual voting rights laws passed, which means we're gonna have a bunch of states that already have, you know, bad legislation kind of limiting the ability to vote and doing things that are really anti-democratic, little d democratic, which also happens to be anti-big D democratic in this case, but never mind that now. And then you'll end up with essentially permanent minority rule, and we have an opportunity right now, brief flicker of hope, and not gonna fucking do it. RBG, you know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, could have retired and gotten replaced by Obama. And I understand. I know it's a lot to ask for somebody when you're an octogenarian, but she's somebody who, first off, she's a woman, or was a woman. I understand that the kind of person that ascends to the Supreme Court is already somebody with a pretty strong will. That's not somebody that's just gonna, go gently into that good night. Somebody who also, probably not gonna be open to people telling them what to do. And, she's somebody who overcame enormous sexism to get there. Enormous bias and all this stuff. I kind of get it. I do. But still, you're like, your whole fucking legacy is just flushed down the toilet because you wouldn't retire and get replaced when you could have. And now you have Breyer who's sitting there like, oh, I don't want to politicize the court. Motherfucker, where the hell are you? Like, the fact that he is so detached from where the world is now makes me think this is not a person who should be making decisions. I mean, how can somebody who has been in... I mean, imagine that you're hired for a job and you sit there in that job for decade after decade after decade. You're probably not going to be at the top of your game anymore, especially if there's no way you can get fired from that job. There's no pressure. There's no incentive for these people to keep up with the times. They're essentially, they're tenured professors back in the good old days when professors actually had a tenure for the most part, and it was like almost impossible to get rid of them, even if they did something horrible. And it's just so goddamn dumb. So, getting back to my friend. My friend and his wife, he plays hockey. With a bunch of people also who don't get vaccinated, don't take any kind of precautions, don't do anything that is protecting themselves or anyone else. And, he's not vaccinated despite many, many urgings from me. His wife, sure as hell not vaccinated. So he goes to play hockey, and one dude is sick there. He's a car salesman who, of course, didn't get vaccinated, didn't mask up, didn't do any kind of social distancing. Brings it in, and not only got my friend and his wife sick, his pregnant wife, but a bunch of other teammates, all fucking sick from something that at this point in time, if you're immune competent, there's no fucking reason to get sick from this shit. The vaccine is not perfect, and I am very paranoid about evolving vaccine evasion, especially given the circumstances with, the way that people are not doing the things that they should be doing, the way that we're not, pumping the vaccine out and, just knocking it out in Africa and India and all of these places. We're just like sitting there, almost like if you wanted to evolve vaccine evasion, we're kind of setting up the conditions for that. And you have so many people who just don't know what is real. And even like my friend again, smart guy, and I've talked to him, but there's like, you can see the tension in his mind where I'm saying something and he's like, well, yeah, you're saying this and you're so certain about it. And my friend is saying this and they're so certain about it. And again, your friend is not a fucking, guy with a PhD who has a master's degree in microbiology. Your friend is not somebody who is an expert on fucking anything, much less this. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm a jackass here for this. And I feel so conflicted emotionally about this because on one hand, I'm really worried about his wife and their kid. I'm really worried about him. They're both in the first week, I guess, and they're both, knocked on their ass. And I know that this respiratory shit, they're already coughing sometimes, but the respiratory shit can get worse in the second week, or and I look at things like fucking Trump. That dude almost died, very nearly died. The only reason he didn't die is because he got the best medical care that money could buy. He got hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of experimental, monoclonal antibodies against this shit. And even then, he almost died. But he lived. If he would have died so many more people would have, I'm not saying that I want him to die, but so many more people would have lived. And he's not a good person. This is somebody who, you look at the sum of his life, it's been such a blight on humanity. He's fucked over so many small businesses. He's fucked over so many people in so many different ways. He's taken so much from so many people. Yeah, if he wasn't there, it'd be a better world, Imagine that. Like, how fucked up does your life have to be if that's the case? And yeah, it's just like, if this dude would have just not made it, then people would have looked at this shit and gone, oh, fuck. I'd better get vaccinated. I'd better wear the goddamn mask. I cannot minorly enough inconvenience myself with the little tiny mask. It's like, oh, I'm so precious. I can't have a little fucking thing on my face that doesn't, that I can breathe through, that is not a big deal. I can't have that possibly. It's, like, oh, it's traumatic for me. Fuck you. Like, honestly, I'm at the end of my rope with this shit. People won't fucking vaccinate. They won't fucking wear a mask. And then they act like saying, like, providing any kind of proof that you are vaccinated is like, I literally am reading this a lot. Wearing a fucking yellow star. Like, literally people are saying shit like this. It's not I don't even know what the fuck to say when somebody's saying shit like this. Like, come the fuck on. Choosing to put other people at risk, making a voluntary choice, and then not wanting to have to pay the price, which would be wearing a mask and maintaining distance, is not getting put in a fucking concentration camp, you fucking asshole. Like, what the fuck is wrong with people? I cannot fathom what the fuck. There's not enough what the fuck in the world. So, yeah, I feel really bad. Coming back to this, I feel really bad. I'm worried. Yeah, like, these guys are not people with, like, the most we have insurance. It's not great insurance. It's better than ACA insurance, which is a really low bar. But yeah, they have insurance. Probably, statistically, they'll probably be okay. But there's no guarantee of it. And, you look at this and it's just like, and certainly, like, the kid, I don't know. I don't even want to think about what they've... And so I'm really worried on one hand. And I'm also, like, the example that keeps coming up in my mind is, like, a kid was playing with fireworks, bang, 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 bang. And then the mom is like, you should stop doing that. You're going to blow your hand off. And the kid's like, nah. And then, like, the mom's like, really seriously, you should stop doing that. The kid's like, no. And then the kid blows his fingers off. And it's like, on one hand, I feel bad for you, but on the other hand, what the fuck did you think was going to happen? You're doing this shit. You're not getting vaccinated. You're not taking any precautions. You're surrounding yourself by people who are not getting vaccinated and not taking any precautions. Like, partly I feel terrible, and partly I'm also like, what the actual fuck? Come on. Like, why did you do this to yourself? And to be fair, my friend, I've talked to him, and I've expressed this to him, and, pretty much, maybe slightly toned down from what I just said, but, pretty strong words. And he said, yeah, I regret not getting a vaccine. And I guess, like, okay, that's good that you regret it, but first off, are you going to get it after, assuming you recover? And I say that not to be, glib, but it's not certain. It's not fucking certain that you live through this shit. But let's just say, assuming you do, assuming everything works out, you're okay. Your wife is okay. Your baby is okay. Are you going to get fucking vaccinated now? Or are you just going to go, well, no, we made it through once. Not even going to, I can't even, I I don't know what the fucking, I don't know what the fuck to say. I live in a world where people who, again, and I think he's a good person. I think he's a smart person, but there is so much bullshit out there that he's sitting there and, again, I bring up the global warming thing because to me, this pandemic is like not even the appetizer. It's just like, that first, like we're going to have a little aperitif before the actual meal. You're going to have like a little drink just to kind of get warmed up for the meal. And, if this is fucked up as badly as it is, you can just tell, we're completely fucked on anthropogenic climate change. I don't see any way. Like, there are things we could do today that would make things better. And at this point in time, I'm looking around and I don't see any reason to feel hopeful about that because it looks like we're just like, we're not going to wear the masks. We're not going to do any of the shit that it takes. And the thing about it that is annoying as fuck is that some of the shit that it takes is like build public transit, build cities where you don't need a fucking car all the time. I've lived in a city where you don't need a fucking car. And you know what? It's nicer. It's nice to be able to walk. Phoenix is not a place where, like, it's not just because of the heat. It's so spread out and so just uninviting to a pedestrian. I walk here a lot, but it's not nice to walk here. Paris, there are some things that could be improved about it, but walking around Paris, most places is beautiful. It's fun, it's nice, and you really and I'm not saying like taking the metro is fast, but driving across the city is also not fast. Walking across the city is not fast. Taking the metro, and the worst case, it takes a while. I lived on the south part of, just outside of Périphérique in Montrouge, and I would go to the rock gym at Pantin, Murmur, which is a weird, it's actually a joke. Murmur is like heart murmur, but mur is also the word for wall. So it's like, never mind. Anyway, I lived in the south part. It would take us like 45 minutes to get up to the Murmur and Pantin. And it's not short, but it was not bad. And at rush hour, it's like, okay, there are a lot of people in here, but still, I kind of liked it. I kind of liked it a lot, actually. Living in a place, and that's without massive investments in this stuff. If you put money into this shit, you could have so much of a better world. I mean, this is a thing that just drives me insane too. The fucking state that I live in did this goddamn flat tax shit, which is going to cost billions of dollars. It's going to essentially rob the schools, which just barely got this red for ed shit passed, and now the Republicans couldn't have that, so we had to fuck up the tax base. A lot of people will get like a $25, the average person will get almost no tax break because of it, and wealthy people will get a massive one, because the reason taxes go up with income is that if you are making a little bit of money, then a little bit of money makes a lot of difference. If you're making billions of dollars, then huge chunk of that, like if you're making $1 billion, taking away 800 or 900 million of that doesn't really change what you can do. You could still have a fucking private jet. You could have several houses. I mean, you could have lots of things that are pretty extravagant and nice. And it's frustrating as fuck. It just annoys the shit out of me. And so anyway, and the taxes for someone like that are not nearly that. Anyway, they're paying fuck all. So my friend is sick, his wife is sick, his pregnant wife is sick, a bunch of his friends are sick. And I'm sitting here thinking like, what the fuck? How do we get out of this? How do we get people into a place where they can actually, like, I don't know, connect to reality again? And maybe they weren't ever, but I think at least, I don't know, I'm not a nostalgia guy, but I do feel like for all of the deceptions and things that might have existed when Walter Cronkite was on the air, and there were like a few stations and all of them had news, and they were all trying to make actual like news as a public service that was supposed to be good, and kind of like elevating to some level at least, versus now where there is no real news for the most part. It's all kind of infotainment. It's like the Brady Bunch thing with 9 talking heads all talking on top of each other. All opinions stuff. It's all for ratings. Who gives a fuck, if there's actually insight there or anything? And it's just like, how do you get from this to, I don't know. I don't fucking know. But it scares me and it frustrates me. And it frustrates me more because the stuff that I want is not like ridiculous, like pie in the skies kind of shit. It's just like basic little fucking obvious shit. One thing I would like to see, and I really hoped that the pandemic would help with this, but this is not even, this is like a tiny little petty thing that just annoys me. But aseptic technique, I go to Chipotle once or twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week. But I'll go places like this, and there you can see people. I keep seeing people, and I swear to God, it's more now than it was a year ago. I'm seeing people, or a year and a half ago. I'm seeing people like touching their faces, doing all, like doing all kinds of stuff, and you're like, what the fuck? You're preparing, doing the like put your hand behind or wipe your hands on your ass, which just went to the restroom, all kinds of shit like this. I'm sorry, dudes. Literally everything is covered in literal shit, completely independent of the pandemic. You're putting that shit on your hands, even if you just washed them, and now you're putting them into my fucking food. Like, I just, how is this? And to me, this is like the most basic thing that you could ask. It's not an unreasonable ask, and yet you can't get it. And the whole world right now seems like that. Like looking at climate change should be a global emergency where we are now. You should be going like, we got to do fucking shit now. Not in 2035 or by 2050 or whenever. Fucking now. We've got to do make some major changes. And not only that, you could make major changes, put a lot of investment in it, and actually make it be a sustainable boon for our economy and for the world economy. But no, just much better to just keep going on with the status quo. And that shit'll, those people, those idiots in the future, they'll sort it all out. It's like, I don't know what the fuck to say. So with that, man, I literally, when I get flustered like that, I'm losing not only the ability to speak, but I'm losing my vision for a second there. I was just like, I can't see, I can't think, I can't speak. And it's just, that's where I am now. That's like the whole of my existence is like ebbing and flowing in and out of that right now because it's so exasperating. And I'm tired of it. I'm fucking tired of it. I want things to not be so shitty that I have to worry about shit all the time and be frustrated with it. And I want people to, I really don't want people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about, who are sitting there listening to somebody who is an expert on a subject and listening to somebody who is not, and saying, well, I really don't know. This fucking thing. I'm telling you the fucking truth based on a lot of evidence. They're telling you a fucking lie based on jack shit. And you're sitting there going like, oh, well, they're pretty much the same. 2 + 2 does not equal 17. I don't know where the fuck this shit comes from. And the thing that drives me insane too, this will be the last thing this is going to be what I end on, because actually, no, this would be the thing I end on. I have one last thing about YouTube that I have to say. But the people who are doing this shit, I actually lost completely my train of thought there. Oh my God. I'm so fucking frustrated with this shit. Ah, man. Okay, never mind. Leaving that for now. The last thing I want to say, I watch a lot of pilot shows. I went flying today, which was kind of scary. I don't like Arizona summers in the afternoon, not the best conditions. I've been trying to fly in the summer afternoon days just to kind of get used to it and get more comfortable with flying in those conditions, but it makes me uncomfortable getting tossed around. And the thing that really is disturbing is like the wind is shifting, which means that like your airspeed will go very rapidly down, like a lot, sometimes. And then you're like, oh shit, I do not want to stall. I'm going to, put some extra power in or do something like this. And also, I don't want to be up here. And so I did 2 touch and goes. Yeah. But I watch a lot of YouTube for pilot stuff. And one of the things I watch is a guy who kind of like noticed over time that he was religious. Generally, I have no problem with that. Although, unfortunately now, the world that we live in, it can't be just like that's an aspect of your personality. It has to like permeate everything. And so, I started noticing it and kind of, it was like stuff is coming up. It was irking me, but it was like, okay, still like the show, still watching it. And a couple days ago, I'm watching one of these, and his whole fucking thing is like this little fucking whiny rant about the FAA, and they're changing some terminology, and this is a thing, like he's talking about like wokeness, like it's a fucking disease or something like this. I hate this term because most of the people that are using it, first off, I would never refer to myself with that term. Second, the people that are using it are this kind of person who are talking about it derisively, and it's like things like changing from manned spacecraft to crewed spacecraft. Why the fuck not? Like, I'm sorry, and you'll find women who are like, oh, well, I don't really care if they call it manned. I don't give a fuck what you think. There are a lot of women who are sitting there looking at manned, and they're thinking, and especially given the world as it is, pretty obvious that that means something. Calling it crewed means something else, and it opens things up. It's just being like a little bit accommodating for people. It's not like that big of a fucking deal. And I'm watching this guy go off on like how horrible this is, and I'm just sitting there like, dude, what the fuck? I mean, I understand that it's a big inconvenience to you to call something by a slightly different name that's actually more accurate. But yeah, I mean, this is one thing I've completely lost, over the last 4 years especially, I've completely lost any idea that religious people are genuinely good, like this kind of person that they're, because there's a whole like, especially this like Southern thing where there's like, oh, I'm so sickeningly sweet. These are the people, the Southern one in particular is, oh, bless your heart, which means fuck you. It basically, I mean, it is a stronger, if I say fuck you, there's a little bit of jest to it. Like it's kind of, I may mean it, but I also am kind of joking. They all say bless your heart. And first off, it seems nice. It seems like they're being kind, which, so there's this deception on it. And then you realize like they're actually saying fuck you, but they're saying fuck you in a way that is really fucking serious. There's no jest to it. It's just like, it's a two-faced thing. There's so many layers to it when you start dissolving it away. And I really hate it. And I think a lot of religious people are like this. Like they pretend to be good and caring and all this shit. And then, like this kind of thing, which is, again, like just a minor thing that to you is not that big of a deal, but to somebody else means a lot. And you're not able to make this tiny concession to them. Like, it's so goddamn dumb. It's so dumb. And then he's sitting there like, oh, well, the people are going to be like flaming me they're going to cook me in the comments. It's like, no. Which maybe he's trying to, he's a very calculating guy and he does video stuff. I'm sure he's probably trying to get engagement in his comments, which is annoying too. But also, nobody cooked him in his comments. Unfortunately, actually, I was reading the comments and like everybody's talking about how bad wokeness is and all that, like this whole, like, just, I was reading them and I was like, I don't ever want to watch your videos again. I don't want to be in any way associated with any of this stuff. Not because of what you said even, but because I'm seeing your audience and I'm seeing like the fucking type of people who are attracted to this shit. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. So I'm never going to watch another one of their videos. And it kind of annoys me because it's like, why? Just, like, and I understand. You have to fill, I need content. You need to have content. It's very important. Come up with some other bullshit. Like, really, there are other things that are, everything you do, everything we do in life there are very few things that are neutral. Some things just kind of neither here nor there. I would say almost everything we do nudges the world, the universe, just a little bit better or a little bit worse. Now, it's like little air molecules pushing against the wall of a balloon. Each one of those nudges is so tiny and insignificant that it doesn't really seem to matter that much. But in mass, in concert, like voting as well, all of those make the fucking difference. You're making the world just a little bit worse place, and a bunch of other people are doing it, and the fact that you're doing it is encouraging other people to do it. The fact that you're doing it is also making, I mean, I gotta say, I felt really fucking shitty here, and I'm not, oh God, I have another thing I have to talk about. Okay, so I always think I'm gonna be done. I need to get to fucking bed, but I have to talk about this too. I've, for several years, been a youth council advisor for NAACP Youth Council, East Valley in Phoenix. And there are a couple things there. I like a lot of things, but a couple of things that bug me. One is, and I think this is a concerted effort by like the police departments to try to sort of get good PR, but they keep having fucking officers come in and talking to people, and it irks me. I might have been open about this. You might, find a few videos on it even. I'm not a huge fan of the cops. And I especially don't like cops sitting there. It's like, oh, my friend, I was going to use an actual person's name, but my friend, let's just call him R, has, he's a good cop. It's like, yeah, he is a nice guy. I know him. He's cool. He seems nice. But also, if he saw somebody doing some shit that was terrible, do you think he's going to blow the whistle? I'm sure that he has seen people doing terrible stuff. And I'm sure that he hasn't done it because it's one of these things, like, you're like in the environment, everybody's doing it, and you're sort of like, do you want to stick your neck out? Probably not. And so you understand, like, becoming, it's an interesting thing, but being in that, just being a cop is kind of being subsumed by that kind of culture. The whole, I always bring people back to Serpico, because Serpico, the actual guy and the movie, were almost half a century ago, right? And they sort of show the thin blue line and all of this kind of stuff. And then you think about, okay, that's where people were. We are here, and we're no further. Like, basically no progress has been made, as far as I'm concerned, in the police departments. In fact, there's a lot of evidence, I would say, that maybe there's been negative progress, which is hard to believe. But anyway, that's a thing that drives me nuts. But the thing that I really wanted to get to there is, and I'm definitely not going to use any names here because we're doing this sort of statewide event, and one of the guys who's organizing it, and I generally like him, but he has a friend also, and his friend is sitting there, he's also an organizer. His friend is sitting there and he's going off on this thing where they wanted to include, it was an interesting thing. I'm trying to, I don't want to give like too much out, but I want to get the core of the information that bugged the shit out of me. They want to talk about relationships. And I mean, there are a bunch of other things in here. But one of the things that was not exactly on the theme of this event, but they want to put in something about relationships. That sounds good. Yeah, every interaction with anyone else is a relationship, right? So, but then they kind of go further and they're like, oh, well, not just relationships, but romantic relationships. And you're like, and the range of kids here, by the way, is like sort of preteen through, I think 25 is the cap. So then romantic relationships. And first off, I'm like, okay, but I'm not sure if that's really, yeah, I'm not sure how much. I do understand like kids are interested in this stuff, but but it was okay. And then he's going further, and it's like not only romantic relationships, but got like super heteronormative, and not only heteronormative. It's like you keep adding these layers, and like it's not just heteronormative, but it's also like the dude is you have to be qualified. This is his word. You have to be qualified to date people. And qualified to him was like making money and having the things that basically like a traditional 1950s husband would have. Again, talking to kids in their teenage years for the most part. And I was just cringing on here, and I realized that I'm maybe more attuned to some of these things than most people, but I'm like sitting there and I was like cringing so hard. And there are people in the organization who are definitely not hetero, and like he's a cis het male, I'm a cis het male, but there are definitely people who are not. And even for me, it was making me cringe. And I'm sitting there thinking like, this has got to be fucking, And also like this is for a statewide event, and there are certainly going to be people there that aren't. And it's like, why do you have to go into this fucking area and push your weird agenda on these little kids? I mean, I just don't understand. And it was an interesting thing because it ended up being like a big discussion back and forth for these meetings always go on for a long time, but this one was like 45 minutes back and forth on this. And a bunch of people expressed discomfort with it. I generally am not somebody who like speaks up that much there for a lot of reasons, but I think, first off, I'm not a kid. Second, I'm not black. I don't feel like I feel like I'm there for support, and mostly I don't really know that it's my place to like stick my head up and say, But here, I even talked about it. I've talked with with somebody sort of out of band and was like, is it appropriate for me to say something here? And she was like, yeah, definitely. So I said something, and it was very clear from the sort of preponderance of people talking about this that this was not super kosher. Like a lot of people were not into it. And the weirdest thing was like after all of that, he comes back and gets like twice as strong. And it's like, what the fuck, dude? Like, what the fuck? That was the thing that actually I didn't say anything until this guy came back, and he's like doubles down on it. And then I just felt like I had to say something. So I get on, I say, like, dude, I'm a cis het male, and what you're saying here is really making me kind of uncomfortable. I can't imagine what it's like for somebody who's not. And why do you need to push this so much? I just don't understand it. And it's like, okay, it's great that it works for you, but that is not everybody. And there are lots of, talking about relationships is kind of an awesome subject. It's a thing that everybody should, I don't think there's anybody on the planet who couldn't stand to improve with regard to relationships. Everybody has something that they're doing wrong probably, or could be doing better. And, that's a great subject. And that's a thing also, like when you're a kid, I'm an adult, I'm still struggling with it somewhat. When I was a kid, I had no fucking clue. I was not a social kid. If you may gather that from here, but I had really crippling social anxiety. I was, so like super shy, and I never understood a lot of things that people just took for granted. Like, like people will, and this one still bothers me to this day, to say hi, instead of just saying hi, people will say, hey, what's up? How's it going? How are you doing? Things like this. They're questions, right? And the response to this that people are expecting is just another question. Ni hao? Ni hao. Yeah, they're not saying ni hao. Oh, wan han, wan hao. They're like saying, like, how's it going? And they're not, the response that I am going to give to that the rest of my life, and certainly to this day, is not bad. Or things could be better. I'm going to answer it like it's a fucking question because it's a fucking question. But that's not what people want. And as a kid, it drove me nuts. Just trying to like wrap my mind around like why, how did this arise? Why does this make sense? It's just silly. And that's just like a little tiny sliver. Like a lot of things that people do that just makes sense to people, seems like normal to them. It seems bizarre to me. It's like you watch it and you're like, yeah. I mean, going to a club. Going to a club is like a nightmare for me. It's there's a movie from probably like the 90s or the early 2000s, I don't know, Bedazzled. And they have this club that they're in. They start there and it's like, kind of cool, and then you go like back to it a few times, and then by the end of the movie, you see it's basically like hell. To me, that club is always hell. I've been to clubs a handful of times in my life. Now, granted, I'm not somebody that really likes to drink that much. I'm certainly not somebody that likes to dance that much. I'm certainly not somebody that really gets much out of it. So you can probably understand why I'm not a huge fan. But to me, it's just like, it's loud. There are a bunch of people that are just, it's kind of gross too. And I don't mean it's gross because people, it's just like people are sweaty and kind of nasty. A lot of people smoke. Fucking smoking is disgusting. I mean, just offensive to me in a huge way. And it's just like, does not appeal. Does not appeal at all. So you see that and you're like, yeah, it just, but anyway, rolling back to actually converging here. Relationships is a subject that anyone could, and even romantic relationships. There's a lot of stuff you could talk about that doesn't have to be like framing things in a way like he's basically saying like this is the relationship, is this particular kind of 1950s man who's the breadwinner and housewife kind of, there are lots of other kinds of romantic relationships. There are lots of other kinds of relationships, and it's good to talk about them. But why do you have to like push so hard on this one? And it was just like, just bugged me. Just really bugged me. Anyway, with that, I thought this was going to be like a 15-minute one. I do need to get to bed, so thank you very much. I hope this wasn't too annoying or rambling. But with that, Zaijian and ZZZ.